Junon, I'm excited to welcome you here today to talk about some of your background, interests, and scholarship. Uh, and I'm particularly excited because you were a special hire that the School of Education made in the past couple of years. We had authorization from the university to hire someone that specialized in research practice partnerships. What are those, and tell us about your expertise in that area.
Sure. Thanks for having me. Research practice partnerships are maybe a philosophy or a methodology of doing research where partnership is put at the forefront. I think an easy way to describe it would be to juxtapose our traditional ways that we're used to doing research as social scientists, which is to be outside observers and to understand a phenomenon. But folks who are trying to do work in partnership with communities or educators really spend a lot of time trying to build from the needs of our practice partners. And so not just thinking about research in the abstract or just knowledge and theory in the abstract, but to actually ground it in the needs of a partner that we're working with. And so there's a fine balance to taking the tools and the rigor of educational science and balancing it with solving problems that would have high impact for a partner in a local community.
And you often use the term design or design-based approaches when talking about your work. How does that add another layer, another dimension to this research practice partnership work?
So my background actually originally was in educational technology, and so I did a lot of work. I studied computer science in undergrad. I was really interested in creating technology for teaching and learning. And design fields like human-computer interaction are largely about creating new innovations, so developing methodologies to design new tools and technology. In the educational context, bringing design into a partnership means being committed to working together to develop solutions that reflect the community or reflect the partner's needs, which is a little bit different than just creating a tool or a curriculum that is outside of kind of the context of your partner. I got interested in that work because often we create technologies from our own theories and what we're thinking about in our minds. And when they get adapted and adopted in schools or neighborhoods or homes, human beings are wonderfully creative, and we figure out lots of different ways to appropriate a tool. And they tend to not be adopted the way we originally thought as the designers. And so I found that co-designing solutions together with the communities you want to impact helps technology be reflected with their values, their needs, their goals. I think this is becoming increasingly important as technology starts to accelerate and amplify. So current conversations around things like algorithms and artificial intelligence, they tend to reflect the theories and how the designer themselves see the world. And if they have impacts on people, those technologies, if they don't reflect individuals or different communities or marginalized communities or communities that don't have a voice in the creation of that technology, often those algorithms and artificial intelligence solutions don't fit the needs. A good example is just when facial recognition first came out on our iPhones. My friends and I used to joke because some of my Asian friends and I would all get identified as each other from facial recognition software. And that just comes from the training of that algorithm. And as that gets better, as we're more inclusive in terms of what data we use to train algorithms, that comes from communities themselves. And so I find I'm very committed to kind of building from community needs and having that reflected in our solutions.
Yeah, that's great. And we brought you in, and very quickly we put you in charge of this network, school partnership network we're building in Orange County. There's often this terminology, network improvement community, that's used in the field to talk about that kind of work. You're overseeing that work. Tell us a little bit about it.
Sure. So one of the exciting things that drew me to UCI was just having this nice infrastructure where we have individual partnerships with schools across Orange County, and we're able to work on local problems of practice with those schools. But there's a different kind of related movement around networked improvement communities, or NICs for short. And that comes from an improvement science perspective, where the goal is to actually bring lots of school partners together and have them share best practices, identify really high impact issues that they want to solve together. But because we can have a network of partners, we can start to attend to variation really systematically and thoughtfully. And so if everyone's banding together to maybe figure out how to better support English language learners and improve student achievement in literacy and reading, what you'll find is that all of our school partners have different variations for how they want to do that. And they also have deep wisdom and practices that they're trying to enact in their schools. And so NICs try to bring that together in a systematic way, instead of just having everybody do things on their own and not reflect on how it's influencing their improvement. So NICs bring everybody together, but the other kind of important term is improvement. And so the focus of our research in a NIC is not to actually prove or understand a phenomenon, but to actually systematically track whether or not the strategies we're trying out improve on some metric. And that kind of rapid, agile form of work is slightly different than kind of the long, deep scholarship that we also do in the academy. It's really based on rapid iterations and cycles, and to actually see whether or not our theories play out in actual improvement. And so the vision is that if you're doing that over time with a deep commitment to a network of partners, we'll both understand something and create really good scholarship. But we'll look back and say, wow, we actually moved the needle on something and improved some aspect of students' lives.
So the research cycles themselves are quicker, but the relationships with partners are longer term.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so doing that kind of rapid work requires a lot of infrastructure and will and energy. And so relationships become the core of that work. And so really having that strong personal relationship with partners in schools, developing routines where you're working together regularly, that ends up becoming the foundation for doing this big lift and kind of seeing change at scale. So in NIC work and in research practice partnership work, there's a lot of emphasis up front on spending time building deep relationships. And that involves just a lot of meetings, and even having a coffee together with the school principal ends up having huge benefits in terms of enacting research later on.
And not only are you overseeing this network, but I know you're also doing a deep dive in one of the sites, Willard Middle School. And that's bringing together some of the interests of the partners there and your own interest in data visualization. Can you describe that, the work you're doing at that site?
Absolutely. So it's a nice case study of how a research practice partnership might evolve. So we started out our relationship with Willard just in the fall of 2018. And we started out by understanding the school and understanding kind of what the principal of the school envisioned in terms of what they wanted to work on this year, what they wanted to improve. And Amy, who's the principal there, she identified this need where they actually have lots of data and lots of information, And teachers and educators actually collect lots of information, but they tend to be in the form of paper, the sheet that everyone's working on together, collecting stories about students. And in the data-driven decision-making and the data visualization research area, we've been focusing a lot on how do you show standardized test scores and growth, which is a different kind of data than what educators collect to understand their students on a day-to-day basis. But there's kind of a bandwidth issue here. So that data ends up being left in the corner of a room because teachers are busy. And there's no way to look at that data and to reflect on it and to make decisions on it. My own research area right now has been around data visualization and how do we communicate data to educators in ways that are more effective for their decision making. And so there's kind of a nice synergy that we found here. So we've been building dashboards together and actually designing the dashboards together with Willard around the data that they collect all around the school. And we've been working with teachers to look at that data. And that data is really interesting because it's not what we call accountability data, which are kind of year-end summative information. And it's not research data, which is what researchers collect to try to understand something. What we call them are practical data or improvement data. And they've been metrics that the teachers can track over time and that actually reflect their practice. So for example, we recently created a dashboard around a visual thinking strategy assessment that the teachers give to their students. Willard is a turnaround art school, which means they use art and visual thinking throughout their subject areas. So students might look at graphs and learn how to argue with evidence from graphs. And so they give these formative assessments on paper, and we've been coding and visualizing the results of that information for teachers, and then helping teachers think about how might we improve visual thinking strategies, practices that they enact. So it's been an ongoing process, and I love working with the team of grad students we have and the teachers and the principal, and we're actually building really beautiful visualizations of the rich life of the school in a way. The principal and I met with somebody at Santa Ana Unified School District where Willard is, and we were looking at these data visualizations we created, and one of the comments that was most gratifying was they mentioned that the data is able to show how Willard is improving on many different areas, and where test scores are just one metric out of many, and so it starts to give a fuller picture of the work of teachers there and where they're improving, where they still need to improve, and that process informs our co-design.
Yeah, and this is part of this larger project, right? This HeadSight app you've been building or platform you're building and pushing out for the field.
Absolutely. So we are building a web-based data visualization platform. It is part of a $5 million NSF, a National Science Foundation grant that we have with collaborators at University of Washington, Vanderbilt University, UC Riverside, and Stanford University. And in this project, all of the universities also have research practice partnerships with school districts, and they're trying to help mathematics teachers, middle grade mathematics teachers, track their teaching practice and improve their practice over time. It's an improvement science type of framework. What we realized was we needed a way to very quickly and practically visualize trends in teacher practices in the classroom. And so we've been designing this platform for that improvement work. And we've been developing a lot of scholarship around what data visualization design means for educators when they're trying to improve practice and not just look at data trends on the whole. And so there's nuances to how the visual design of information can facilitate or even impede an improvement process. So you could imagine like instructional coaches and teachers talking about data together, and how you show that data shapes the conversation sometimes.
Yeah, and you mentioned that some of these other universities, Stanford, University of Washington, Vanderbilt, et cetera, have research practice partnerships with local schools. But I know you've also talked to me about how our network partnerships in Orange County and the research practice partnerships is really unique in many ways. Our approach. Could you take a few minutes to unpack that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think in my own history of doing partnership research, it's often the enterprising researcher who reaches out to a practice partner, or it's a practice partner like a district superintendent or a school principal who reaches out to a researcher, and they develop a personal kind of project together.
And then they go get funding often.
They go get funding together, or they try to sustain that one project together. What is unique about UCI is we are cultivating those local relationships, but because we're doing it systematically and with school support, with the university support, with a systematic plan to fund and get donor support for those relationships, we're hoping to see if we might be able to do this at scale that I actually haven't been able to see anywhere in the country at the moment yet. I think there's a lot of individual RPPs, and then there are network improvement community projects that are around the country, and we're almost trying to blend the two and to see if we could sustain that as a long-term strategy and not just a project-by-project strategy. So I'm really excited about that possibility. I've never tried that before, and so there's a bit of excitement to see how it'll work. But it's just a tremendous opportunity here.
Let me talk about a different project that you've been involved with. I know you're involved with the College Advising Corporation on this work around mentoring,
Yes.
mentoring and advising. Can you tell us a little bit about that project?
Absolutely. So the College Advising Corps is a national nonprofit.
Corps, not corporation.
Corporation or corps.
Okay.
They are a national nonprofit that has been extremely successful placing college mentors in low-income high schools and helping low-income high school students apply and get accepted to college. When I met with CAC, they shared with me a new challenge that they have, which is that while all of their low or high percentage of their low-income students are accepted to colleges, a lower percentage actually enroll in college, and this is in the research literature known as summer melt, in the summer between your high school senior year and college freshman year. And as we started to develop our relationship and talk more about the challenges that they're trying to solve, it became apparent that one big factor was just in the summer months, the lack of bandwidth for counselors to connect with students and give social support. There's a lot of informational support, how to register for class, how to enroll, how to look at your financial aid report. But there was a lack of opportunity to just converse and talk about how do you feel about moving away from home? What are the challenges if your family needs you at home, but you're going to college? What's the social scene like? How am I going to fit in? That kind of social and emotional support in the summer when there's no school to bring everybody together. There was just a lack of that. And so we were thinking about ways to design solutions to help with this issue, and also to study whether or not that might make an impact. And we came up with a text messaging-based solution. And we're together creating a artificial intelligence chatbot that helps solicit student thoughts and questions and routes them to available counselors via text so that they can have a really quick text interaction and hopefully answer questions or provide support. And our theory, our hypothesis is that lots of little, short text interactions of support may be just as effective as trying to schedule mentoring time or having a 1-hour meeting or things like that. And so we designed the chatbot together with counselors, CAC counselors, and we're running a big study this summer in New York City to test the efficacy.
Yeah, and there's artificial intelligence also reading the text, right?
Absolutely. So we're using natural language processing platforms to take in the student texts and questions and be able to route them to hopefully the right information or route them to a counselor who might talk to them about that specific topic. Prior studies have largely focused on just sending information, so that they'll send a text reminder, like don't forget to enroll or things like that. And we're trying to see if a little bit of interaction using artificial intelligence might better route students to the right support.
And part of the assessment is going to involve experimental design as well, right?
Absolutely. So we're running a small pilot randomized controlled trial this summer. And so we're with about 1,000 students, and we want to see if whether or not having that little bit of interaction on top of the text information may be related to higher propensity to enroll in the fall. It's a small pilot, and then our hope as a partnership is to scale this out with the College Advising Corps nationally. But we're in conversations about that, and we're kind of doing it systematically as it makes sense for the partnership.
So some of the students get just the information. Some get the information plus the chat and text box platform.
That's right. That's right. And so we're also able to track the logs of all the interactions that are happening. And so there's a learning analytics component to the project as well. And we want to actually test out and explore some mediation hypotheses. So, for example, seeing whether or not certain kinds of text interactions may be related to increased enrollment, or if this kind of social support or informational support has different relationships. So we're really excited about the research component of it, but also just that this was all co-designed with a partner that has direct kind of implications on their program as well.
Yeah, and this was supported by the Institute for Educational Science, a large IES grant.
Yes, that's correct. So the Institute of Education Science funded us for this initial 2-year project to develop the partnership and to do the pilot study. And then we're hoping to use that as a foundation to get support.
Well, we're very lucky to have you here at UCI, and Orange County, I think, is also very lucky to have you partnering with them to improve education in our community.
Great. Thanks for having me.